The end has come. The Kino Corner is reviewing a superhero movie. I know. I have a confession to make. I'm a bit of a Batman fan. He's really the only superhero I liked growing up, and so I read a bunch of the comics as a kid. I especially preferred the comics that took darker and more surreal turns like Arkham Asylum. I like to imagine Batman as being this guy who is just as psychotic as his opponents, but he gets away with it because he's on the side of what we consider to be good and orderly. And the best Batman comics throw his and thus our worldviews into question. Matt Reeves' latest interpretation of the Batman does just this. A bit of forewarning, this movie is not like Nolan's trilogy or Snyder's imagining, and it's definitely a far cry away from anything that came out in the 90s. Don't go to see this movie if you want a lot of action and fast-paced storytelling with gigantic set pieces. It's probably the slowest paced Batman film to date, and that's why I loved it. Reeves grounds his film in our own reality, or a darker version of it. Gotham this time around is New York City. It takes place in our current year, but it feels like New York in the 70s when violent crime, social unrest, perversion, drugs, etc. was at an all-time high. The whole city is sick, and we get the sense in this movie that Batman either can't do much to stop it, or he himself is part of the problem.
Someday a real rain will come and wash all this scum off the streets.
And just as Gotham is sick, Pattinson's version of Bruce Wayne is sickly. He's got muscles and he can fight, as you'd expect, but when he's Bruce Wayne and not the Batman, he looks gaunt and pale. He's not the playboy that we've seen in other Batman movies who goes on cruises with Russian ballerinas or who buys banks to just purchase a house in Kansas.
How did you get the house back from the bank?
I bought the bank.
He's an obsessive recluse with bad social skills. Literally me. This version of Batman is a man of few words. He'd rather nod or make a physical gesture than say anything. And it's a testament to Pattinson's superb talent and acting that we can understand his emotions, intentions, and thoughts even behind the mask. This character feels kind of like the driver from Drive or Agent K from Blade Runner 2049. I have a feeling these guys knew that they were making a Literally Me character too, as in the first act of the film, there's a monitor with Drive in big bold letters. I might be overthinking this, but I do feel like that was a Kinophile dog whistle. And speaking of Literally Me characters, Paul Dano's turn as Riddler is great. He gives off serial killer vibes, for sure, sometimes coming across as being sort of like Jigsaw or Kevin Spacey from Seven, but he does add a humanity to it, and I won't say it here, but I found myself rooting for him during parts of the movie. I won't get into spoilers in this review, but I want to temper some of your expectations. This movie isn't really about the Batman versus the Riddler. The Riddler does take the place as Batman's antagonist, but this film is more about Bruce uncovering a great conspiracy of corruption and crime. That's why this film feels slower than other iterations of Batman, as it focuses almost solely on this mystery and on Batman himself. Many superhero movies use their heroes as an avatar for the audience to project themselves onto, while the villains get all the best characterization and lines. But the Batman doesn't do that. I'm not saying that the Batman isn't literally me. He is. Don't worry. Everything's okay. What I'm saying is that this film uses the villains to explore Bruce's psyche, and he's not all good. Reeves explores identity. Who is Bruce Wayne? Is his Batman persona more real than he is? Does his mask allow him to become his actual self? How much does he have to pay for the sins of his father? Is he just as bad as the bad guys? The Riddler acts as a foil to Bruce, forcing him to look inwards in order to solve the case. And so it plays out more like a neo-noir than like a superhero film. Adding to this idea of the Batman being a film noir is that Lieutenant Gordon, played by the always excellent Jeffrey Wright, acts as Batman's sidekick. He had a way more prominent role in this movie than I was expecting, but it makes sense. It's like they're good cop, bad cop. You know, Gordon is restricted by the police code and the law, but Batman isn't. And it makes for an interesting dynamic that's made even more fun when Catwoman joins the party. One of the ways that it doesn't feel like a superhero film is that all the costumes are grounded. The Penguin is just a mafia guy with a messed up face. Selena Kyle, by my memory, isn't even referred to as Catwoman. She's just a cat burglar who wears a leather jumpsuit and a custom balaclava. I think that maybe Reeves thought that she would look too much like an e-girl if they gave her cat ears. I don't know. Also, the Riddler wears a winter suit that he probably purchased at a military surplus store. The biggest hurdle for a film like this is that they can make all the villains grounded, but the main character still has to be a rich guy in a bat suit. They make it work in this film by making Bruce Wayne the kind of guy who definitely was the kid in school who regularly dressed up as anime characters. I'm sure he had a light Yagami face. Quick question, who do you think Pattinson's Bruce Wayne considers best girl? Rei, Asuka, Misato, Mari? Let me know in the comments down below. The other aspect of this movie that grounds it is the action. I remember seeing a lot of criticism pre-release about the bulletproof nature of his suit. Yeah, there are some cases of him being shot and not getting too hurt, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Batman wears layers upon layers of bulletproof armor. But Batman action isn't really about shooting, it's about hand-to-hand combat, and the fighting in this movie is very tactile. I feel like I could feel the punches. It's a mix of great sound design as well as Reeves' decision to make the action scrappy. It's nothing like the weightless action we've seen in, just about every Marvel movie. We're watching a young and reckless man full of rage fight handfuls of thugs, sometimes barely getting by. Though there are some scenes where Batman feels invincible, and we're given a well-deserved minute or so of a power fantasy. The action scenes are few and far between for a film like this, and the action never really lasts that long, which only makes it feel more impactful. Of course, this is all captured by Greig Fraser's excellent Moody cinematography. You might be familiar with his work, as he also shot Dune. Yeah, the dude is great. He plays with shadows and high contrast lighting to give the Batman a film noir feel, but he allows oranges to sometimes seep into the frame and other times overwhelm the image. The use of orange, at least on a first viewing for me, cemented the film at a certain time of the year, namely Halloween, but it also reminded me of fire. When we see Batman looking over Gotham's orange skyline, we get the feeling that we're looking at a city on fire. He balances these more operatic shots with scenes that look pallid, as if all the color had been drained out of them, leaving us a sickly, soon-to-be corpse of a film. His cinematography captures the atmosphere of Gotham in such a stark way that we have a sense of just how bad the city is right when the movie begins. And of course, I have to mention the score. Michael Giacchino's score ranges from minimalist and moody to bombastic and orchestral, but I think the most interesting thing about the score, for me at least, is how Nirvana's song Something in the Way is used as a motif throughout the soundtrack. We hear the song many times during the film, but Giacchino also worked the song into his own score. I never thought that a Batman movie would have a Nirvana song as its theme song, but it works. I'll say that my biggest criticism against the movie is that it has what amounts to 3 different endings. A lot of movies like this fall into the same trap of having multiple endings, and I'm sorry to say that this one also falls into that trap as well. I think that one of those endings could have been cut and it would have made the ending more impactful, but they kept all of them in, so it is what it is. That's really the only time I felt the length of the film. It's nearly 3 hours long, but I was pretty much gripped throughout. Now, I can see the Batman becoming a bit contested among normal movie-going audiences. The reasons I like it might be the reasons you don't. I enjoyed the fact that it felt more in line with films like Seven, The Parallax View, Chinatown, and other neo-noirs than with other Batman movies. I also liked how it's one of the most atmospheric superhero films to release in recent memory. It's a breath of fresh air in the age of bland Marvel movies and also mostly terrible DC films. Not only is Pattinson the best Batman, but Matt Reeves' The Batman is the best Batman film in my humble opinion. I'm certifying it as Cape Kino. If you want to hear a more in-depth discussion of the film that will have spoilers, I will be talking about it on Is It Kino with Simeon Jimmy and Florian Himsel. When that podcast episode is up, I will leave a link to it in a pinned comment. I don't do traditional movie reviews like this that often, so if you want to see more of these, more laid-back reviews, let me know. I'm putting way more time into YouTube now, and I'm trying a lot of new things to see what you guys like. I've been the Kino Corner, and I will see you all in the next video.